It was crystal clear that some very unethical and immoral and probably illegal things took place. Michael Barr directed Fed staff to find something so he could deny custodian. There was a giant rug pull. The Fed is incredibly political. Ramamurthy, Gary Gensler, and the head of the FDIC, Marty Gruenberg, decided to lock arms, pulling every lever they could to try to kill the crypto industry. What you saw was incredible abuse of agency power, and it was coordinated by the White House. Somebody at the Fed leaked to Bloomberg. We had multiple whistleblowers come forward. Everybody's going to look and say, just the magnitude of corruption that Custodia ended up uncovering.
When did you first notice that something was seemingly wrong, and kind of explain what you were trying to do, what the steps you were taking with Custodia Bank, and where you first started to notice this pushback or low-key pushback? When did you notice something was wrong?
Yeah, it was in the spring of 2022 when both the governor of Wyoming and Senator Lummis had gotten phone calls from the Fed saying that they were going to be releasing these proposed guidelines for access to the payment system. We were actually we were making all kinds of progress, and we subsequently did sue. We did get discovery, and the publicly disclosed discovery makes it clear we were very close to getting approved. And then FTX occurred. In fact, actually, it all happened at about that same time. And there was a meeting in November 2023 at which we now know through leaks, thank goodness Washington, D.C. is a sieve, that Michael Barr directed Fed staff to find something so he could deny Custodia. Wow. It was all part of this all-of government approach to try to kill the crypto industry. But the record shows that up until that point, we were making progress. The first time I knew that sand was going to be thrown in our wheels, though, was in spring 2022 when, like I said, the governor and the senator got phone calls from the Fed saying they were going to change the rules on us. So it's an interesting debate in federal agency circles whether when someone applies and the rules are one thing and then the rules change on them during the application process, are those rules the ones that apply? But what I will say is that we played along, we played ball, and we kept going and said, all right. And in fact, actually, one of the back communications was, we're going to get these rules in place, and then the Wyoming speedy banks like Custodia are going to be waved through. A Fed governor told both governor of Wyoming and senator that we would be waved through. Well, it turns out there was a giant rug pull, of course, like I just talked about in November 2023. But think about that time of spring 2022 when we first knew we were going to be slowed down until November 2023. And we didn't hear, November 2022. So it was less than a year. It was spring to November 2022. But we got the official denial. It took them a couple of months once they had decided to deny us. We got the official denial in January 2023.
What would you say was probably the most shocking thing? Was it the low key, like, go and find something? Like, they were explicitly saying, like, just whatever it is, find anything you can to deny. Is that effectively what was going on?
Yeah, they put out an 86-page denial order, and the longest ever Fed denial order in Fed history was 3.
Oh my God.
I know. Yeah. So we were very clearly targeted, and we were lied about. And what was the most shocking thing? I mean, there's so many shocking things. So the whole find something, the whole, like, very clearly target, 86 pages of throwing everything. And the funniest thing they threw at us was that I didn't have banking experience. I was a managing director at big Wall Street banks. Like, come on. It was but that just shows you the extent to which they were going to paper the file. And probably the most shocking, there's so many shocking things. But one of them was that the White House got involved. The coordination that happened between the White House and the Fed, again, this supposedly apolitical Fed, this is a big topic of du jour, right? Because everybody's watching to try to see if Trump's going to fire Powell, and a lot of people are like, no, we got to defend the independence of the Fed. The Fed is incredibly political. It always has been, that whole thing is a mirage of independence. But the White House and the Fed coordinated. But one of the other crazy things is they were trying to intimidate us into running away. They being the Fed, and the White House was involved at this point as well. And so we got a phone call from Bloomberg 2 days before the vote, to vote our membership application occurred, and Bloomberg told us that we were going to be voted down. How did Bloomberg know 2 days before the vote occurred what the vote was going to be?
Yeah.
And first of all, and second of all, rather, that phone call happened during an FOMC blackout week, when it is Fed policy that every single Fed employee is prohibited from talking to the press. So somebody at the Fed leaked to Bloomberg. We sent a letter to the Fed's general counsel, and within hours, Bloomberg had it.
Let me break this down for my fellow Bitcoiners. In just 8 weeks, I've seen a serious shift. More strength, more energy, and fast muscle gains. The reason? FITSCRIPT. They ran 124 biomarkers, blood, hormones, inflammation, and built a fully custom plan: nutrition, training, supplements. No guesswork, no templates. This is functional medicine meets precision fitness for high-performing men who want sovereignty over their health. If you care about optimization the way you care about your money, test, don't guess. Don't trust, verify. Hit the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to check out FITSCRIPT and see what's possible.
You opted out of the broken financial system by adopting Bitcoin and taking self-custody of your money. But protecting your wealth is only part of the equation. Now it's time to protect your freedom. My family is stacking sats and stacking flags. A second passport is our hedge against government overreach and uncertainty. If you're a Bitcoiner looking for your exit strategy, our friends at Citizen X will help you secure second citizenship through investment or descent. Book your free call today by hitting the link in the show notes or simply scanning the QR code on the screen.
So now I am aware that very likely that both the Fed and the White House were leaking to Bloomberg. And the crazy thing is, that weekend after the denial occurred, which was on a Friday during the FOMC blackout week, we had the first whistleblower come forward. We had multiple whistleblowers come forward, but I didn't know it at the time. It took me a couple of weeks to go through. He contacted me through LinkedIn, and he was very close to what happened. He knew exactly what happened, and he started naming names. And by the way, Nick Carter independently, when he put out his Operation Chokepoint 2.0, who's who, wanted poster, if you will, with pictures of everybody, he independently got the same story. He was not talking to the same person. So again, thank God Washington, D.C. is a sieve. But we started getting names very fast. And it was crystal clear that some very unethical and immoral and probably illegal things took place.
Wow. So would you, with these experiences, would you say that this goes kind of even far beyond just Custodia's case? Like, is this, there's like a major kind of broader, either constitutional or democratic concern here?
Yes. Well, I mean, what you saw was incredible abuse of agency power. And it was coordinated. It was coordinated by the White House. And this guy, Bharat Ramamurthy, the person I just told you who contacted me, he was a Senate confirmed Biden appointee. And he was the first person who told me Bharat Ramamurthy's name. And I had never met this guy. I had no idea who he was. And by the way, a couple of days after the denial, remember the denial happened on a Friday. I think it was the following Tuesday, Dick Durbin attacked Custodia by name on the Senate floor. I'd never met him. It was all just this giant coordinated thing. And the guy who was pulling the strings was Bharat Ramamurthy. And two of the whistleblowers, well, more than two of the whistleblowers ended up filling in puzzle pieces about what happened. There was a power vacuum. I think we all now know Joe Biden wasn't really the president of the United States. And that there were, I mean, he was nominally there maybe for some things, but certain things he just, wasn't involved. And this was one of them, that there was a power vacuum, and into that power vacuum stepped this guy, Bharat Ramamurthy. And, he very clearly was directing the chorus. What I'm told is that Gary Gensler, and the then head of the FDIC, Marty Gruenberg, decided to lock arms and pursue an all-of-government approach, pulling every lever they could to try to kill the crypto industry. And if you go look up who Bharat Ramamurthy is, he ran economic policy for Elizabeth Warren's 2020 presidential campaign. Enough said.
Yeah, that's putting it lightly. Absolutely. Now I'm want to touch a little bit on the Chokepoint 2.0 stuff as well.
Yeah.
Can you, for people that are watching this and maybe they're a little bit unfamiliar, can you kind of outline what Chokepoint 2.0 was and how that's changed with the election and change of administration, like what the state of it was then versus now?
Well, it was an abuse of power, right? So kind of getting on this same theme where you had a guy in the White House locking arms with people at independent agencies, quote unquote, independent agencies, but pursuing an all of government approach. And you look at what happened in the crypto industry, the SEC was clearly a big part of it, but so was the Fed, so was the FDIC, so was the OCC, so was the CFTC, so was the Department of Energy, so was the EPA going after Bitcoin miners, right? So was the Department of Labor trying to keep Bitcoin out of 401k plans. It was an all of government approach, all coordinated from the White House. Candidly, what is this telling you? It's just telling you that so much power has been concentrated in Washington, D.C., and it can be so abused, and there's no check and balance on the system. Now, the check and balance is the judicial system. There are some, we're in active litigation. I'll stop there. It's been more than 3 years, and we'll see where that ends up going. But there isn't a check and balance within the executive agency itself. So when you ask the more existential question, who's it? Do we have 3 or 4 branches of government in the United States? Functionally, by creating independent agencies, and this is a very hot topic in the legal, especially constitutional law field right now, does the president of the United States have the power to fire the people in charge of independent agencies? By what constitutional authority is there a 4th branch of government called independent agencies? Congress created these things, but they may never have been constitutional in the first place. That's what's actually being challenged. And there are court cases. The Humphreys Executor Court case is the big one about whether the U.S. president has the ability. Is he actually the chief executive officer of the executive branch of government or not? And with these independent agencies, are they constitutional in the first place? I think we're going to get answers to these. There are several court cases running through right now. It's a hot topic as we're recording this. I see my TV in the background. The headline: Trump decided not to fire Powell. This whole question of, does a president have the ability to fire appointees at an independent agency, or are they really a 4th branch of government with no check and balance on them?
Yeah, that's it would take a lot to fully answer that question, I imagine. But nonetheless, I want to kind of dive into how things are progressing when you're having with conversations with lawmakers or different agencies and things nowadays, and politicians. How do you perceive the understanding of Bitcoin and the entire industry coming from them versus just a few years ago? Has it shifted?
Oh, it's definitely gotten better. Every time somebody big from TradFi decided to come in, Larry Fink, for example, at BlackRock, it caused it to be okay for those who used to be critics. And remember, President Trump used to be a critic. In fact, one of the most frequently liked tweets that I've ever sent was when I politely countered Trump during his first term, where he said, Bitcoin's for scammers, basically. And I said, Mr. President, let me explain. And so I, tried to speak truth to power. And ultimately, everybody who did help Trump along ended up flipping him. And, I think a lot of us in the Bitcoin space, we have a knee-jerk reaction in the beginning. No, this can't possibly be true. And then you start going down the rabbit hole. And I don't really know anybody who's gone deeply down the rabbit hole who ever came back out. And all of us start skeptical. So I think everyone who is skeptical is an opportunity, because ultimately it's just taking them longer. They haven't had that moment yet where they wake up and realize money is not what the government says it is. It's what human beings use. It's a good that human beings use as a medium of exchange. All this other stuff about money and where it comes from is stuff that is essentially being disproven right in front of our very eyes.
How much of your troubles would you attribute to a bit of a good old boys club and giving the incumbents time to prepare and get their ducks in a row before any newcomers can get their foot in the door?
Oh, a lot. There are, I've alluded to this in a couple of other recent podcasts. I'm sitting on some pretty big things that I've never talked about before. And when those eventually do come out, as I believe they will, everybody's going to look and say, just the magnitude of corruption that Custodia ended up uncovering by just refusing to go away, refusing to be intimidated by these thugs who tried to kill us. I mean, we were debanked 5 times. And that was not accidental. Remember, we have a lawsuit, right? If there's something called standing in a court of law. If we had failed as a business, we would have lost that standing to keep the lawsuit going, right? So start to put the pieces together. Maybe were we debanked an unusually large number of times because there might have been a strategy to try to make that lawsuit go away by killing us? I'll leave that as a rhetorical question.